All right, man, peace. You know, brothers, it's truly fascinating to me how much of what we actually think in our lives is based on perspective and whether or not we're actually within the fire, partaking in that event, or we're just a quote-unquote innocent onlooker or bystander watching something transpire. Sometimes we'll see something going on out in the street, maybe a fight or a fracas or what have you. Maybe we'll see the police arresting somebody and we'll say to ourselves, damn, they're being real rough on that person. But if we were there 15 minutes earlier, we might have seen that person try to rape a woman or kidnap a child. And that would change our complete understanding on why we're perceiving what we perceive or why we think what we think. Why am I saying all this? Because LeBron James made a statement a couple of weeks ago when Harrison Barnes got traded. And what I found so fascinating about it is that he was trying to use the business transaction that the Dallas Mavericks were executing to better their team and really whiten their team. In the long run, he was trying to use that transaction as an excuse to get on his soapbox and act as if he was so concerned about all of the NBA players. When he was in the same exact situation a couple of years ago with Kyrie Irving, and he had no problem trying to keep Kyrie on the team and trying to make sure that Kyrie was as unhappy as possible as long as it was what was best for LeBron James. But now that he cannot acquire Anthony Davis, supposedly he's so concerned about Harrison Barnes, a player who's making 8 figures every year, getting moved to Sacramento, which would actually be a better situation for him. So anyway, Jalen Rose sat down with Stephen A. Smith and Max Kellerman. So of course they're going to talk about it and I'm going to chime in.
There's been a lot of criticism of late with players wanting to control their own destiny, while the face of the league was hot on this issue, highlighting the hypocrisy with the owners. LeBron posting on his IG
Isn't it so interesting, LeBron James talking about somebody being a hypocrite?
In regards to Harrison Barnes being traded during last night's Mavericks game against the Hornets. Let me read it to you. So let me guess, this is cool because they had to do what was best for the franchise, right? Traded this man while he was literally playing in the game and had...
Oh, boo-hoo. Somebody get the violins out. Harrison Barnes making upwards of damn near $20 million, maybe even over $20 million a year. He got traded in the middle of the game from Dallas to Sacramento. Oh, my God. Poor Harrison Barnes. Knock it off, LeBron James. We know what you're really upset about. You're upset that the media is raking your new boo thing, Anthony Davis, over the coals. You're upset that Rich Paul was unable to utilize certain machinations and intimidation and false propaganda through your shows in the media to prompt or force the New Orleans Pelicans to trade Anthony Davis to your new squad, the LA Lakers. That's really what you're mad about.
Zero idea. I'm not knocking who traded him because it's a business and you have to do what you feel is best. But I just want that narrative to start to get real change, not when a player wants to be traded or leaves a franchise that he's a selfish, ungrateful player. But when they trade you, release, waive, cut, etc., it's best for them. I'm okay with both, honestly, truly am. Just call a spade a spade. All right.
No, who gives a shit? I mean, honestly, brothers, we have to learn about perspective. Perspective is very important. And that's why I like what Russell Westbrook said so much about how he does not give a shit about how people feel. He's supposed to operate that way. Because no matter how long we live, whether it's 50 years, 60 years, 80, 90 years, we have to understand what's truly important in life. The Most High is going to bring maybe 5 or 6 people into your life who are actually going to be of true significance and importance over the term of your entire life. You cannot allow yourself to be overcome or overwhelmed by what random people think or how they feel about you. That's the reason why the term fan is an abbreviation for fanatic. If you're ever expecting a fan to understand why you want to leave them to the same degree as why their team is going to better their team by removing a player to bring on another player who hopefully is going to make their team better, you're a fool. That's never going to happen. And in that same way, hopefully LeBron James is as sensitive to players who don't want to be traded away from their team as he is of wanting fans to understand why certain players want to force trades.
All right, so LeBron trying to highlight the hypocrisy there. Jalen Rose in the house. Good to see you, as always.
I love to play spades.
Yeah? You any good?
My.
Hi.
I don't know why Molly Karam sits on this show and act like she don't understand or know what Jalen Rose is good at or what he likes.
Stephen A., does the NBA have a serious problem?
Well,
Before Stephen A. Smith answers, let me say this. The NBA is going to have a problem if they don't nip this in the bud. Because it's one thing if a player is trying to force a trade, if he's unhappy, if he's being disrespected on his team. But you just can't be in the middle of a 4 or a 5 or a 6 year deal and say, you know what, I don't feel like being here anymore. I want out. I'm going to make it public. And if you don't trade me, I'm just going to dog it. You can't have that.
They do in this respect. LeBron is absolutely right, as he was alluding to what
LeBron is absolutely full of shit.
The public feels and how it stigmatizes players and doesn't do the same when it comes to ownership, teams, management.
Because fans root for the jersey. They root for the jersey. And if you're a great player wearing that jersey, they root for you. If you want to leave that team and it's going to make their team a worse team than it already was, they're going to be upset with you. Once again, that's why they're fans. They're emotional. Okay? For any prominent player to expect that when he willfully wants to depart from a franchise, for fans to throw him bouquets of roses and things of that nature, you're a fucking idiot. And LeBron James went all the way to the extent of having a school built in Akron so that when he returned back to Cleveland, he can get applause. Because his ego is so fragile, he needs that. He can't handle rejection.
Etc. You don't hear those things being said about executives making decisions. I might have disagreed to some degree with Isaiah Thomas and the problem that he had with Danny Ainge at the particular moment in time that Danny Ainge let him go.
Well, Isaiah Thomas had a soul tie with Boston. That was his problem.
Assuming, of course, that Danny Ainge didn't look him in the face, tell him one thing and then do another. But in the end, because my mentality is, as long as he didn't lie to his face, it's business. We get all of that. And you didn't hear anything about Danny Ainge, but you heard a lot of things, or you would have heard a lot of things about Isaiah Thomas if the shoe was on the other foot. So LeBron is right about that. But when it comes to the league itself, here's where you have a problem. You have the animus on the part of the players that ultimately is going to transfer over to them, because you're always going to have some resentment of those in power. The NBA continuously wins in collective bargaining.
And that's all it's ever been about. When these players, whether it be in the NBA or the NFL, they get on TV and they ramble on about how they're being quote unquote oppressed by white owners. Look, dude, you're getting paid 8 figures every year to play a game that normal people consider a quote unquote kids game, but you can do it at an elite level. So you're getting paid because of the rarity of skills that you display, how rare your athletic gifts are. So you deserve it, because in a capitalistic environment, you're paid based on your ability to garner attention and create revenue. So there's no problem with that. But then don't come back and say that you're being oppressed when you don't have the business acumen to establish an enterprise. That's the difference between an owner and an employee for that company or for that business or for that corporation. It's not that difficult to understand. Everything has to be done incrementally. And LeBron James is trying to act as an agent of chaos in the NBA to try to fill these players' heads up with nonsense, and they're going to get smacked when it comes time to collectively bargain the next agreement, because he does not have anywhere near the intelligence that he's trying to act like he has. That's why he makes so many of these empty statements that easily can be dissected if that's truly your concern. Now, the issue is that the mainstream super liberal sports media, they love to pamper LeBron James, and they're going to set him up for a very major fall. And let me say this again. These owners in the NBA and also the NFL, if LeBron James keeps running his mouth, they're going to expose him. That's why I call him LeBron Armstrong. That dude, in my opinion, in my view, of course, what I'm saying is alleged, has a lot of dirt in his closet. He has a lot of skeletons in his closet. And he's running his mouth an awful lot. And for the most part, does not know what the hell he's talking about. And he's a hypocrite. Once again, he's talking about how fans perceive a trade. Who cares about how fans feel about a trade? Are you getting paid? Are you getting your money? That's all that matters.
They continuously get most of the things that they want. A lot of these things could be resolved if your players association were to make, and I'm certainly not trying to cast any aspersions on Michelle Roberts, who's just started at the job a few years ago, and I think is doing an outstanding job. But in terms of history, there are a bevy of collective bargaining agreements that we can point to that simply were not that favorable to the players. From the days of Simon Gordine and on to Billy Hunter and others, there's been plenty of deals where we looked at it and we said, this is not a great deal for the players. And the players will turn around and resent the league for it.
That's because the players lack solidarity. The owners know that if they wait the players out, the players will eventually conform. They will eventually capitulate, because most of these guys do not have good business sense. They don't know how to save their money. They don't know how to create coffers for themselves so that they can try to outlast the owners. and worst comes to worst, the owners will attempt to bring in replacement players. So that's the real issue with the players. They're thinking about playing basketball. The owners are thinking about business. So it's going to be very difficult for the players to be able to win in collective bargaining.
That's problematic because at the business negotiating table, both sides are trying to win what it is that they want. Now, you say you understand business, but the reality is you usually resent the outcome when you don't perceive it as working in your favor.
Because they lead with their emotions.
And a lot of times, particularly in this day and age with the advent of social media and beyond, because the players have more of a voice, now more so than ever before, if you harbor those kind of feelings and you believe you have that level of influence, it will build and augment your resolve to the point that once you ultimately go back to the negotiating table, and they ain't going back for a while, well, ultimately, if you get to that point, you're going to have you're going to believe you have a level of leverage that you may not have had in the past. And that's where it could become problematic for the league.
The league doesn't have a problem. They have partners, and the partners are called the players. Now, you're right about the CBA because the players are negotiating against a virtual monopoly. So while the league has had a very good attitude toward their player business partners, it's still from the point of view of the monopoly. We're being generous here. We're not really forced to do these things necessarily.
And let's say this, when they call the players partners, partners is in quotes, okay? Because in order for the owners to transition out of their role, they have to sell the team. The players can easily be transitioned out of their role by being cut, by not being signed, etc., so on and so forth. The players constantly have to prove their worth and their value over the course of contracts, which the owners are signing. So, I mean, let's be truly honest here. They're partners when it comes to the revenue, but not when it comes to the decision making.
And so the players use what leverage they have to counteract that. Look, you're an NBA player. You're one of the best who ever did it at what you do. You've gotten to the height of your profession. The league already has rules in place to ensure that you have to leave so much money on the table to leave your team that virtually no top player in the history of basketball has left before year 6. The year before they can be a free agent. They're trying to force a trade so they can get more money from their new team. Because if you wait to leave in free agency, you then have to leave even more money on the table. In other words, at no point do you get to choose where to play without leaving tremendous amounts of money on the table.
Well, Max Kellerman, I have news for you. That's a very good business paradigm for the NBA. Why is that? Because if you're going to have 30 markets that you're going to have franchises in, you want the fan base in all 30 markets to be fully invested. That's why the NFL is king in America, because whether you're in Jacksonville, Kansas City, or in LA or New York, you feel like coming into the season that your team has a real chance to win as long as they've drafted well. And that's why the NFL is king. They don't have to have agents on television talking about how much better the NFL is than the NBA. Like you see all these shills on television, Rachel Nichols and these people, they always have to take shots at the NFL. Why is that? Because they know in their heart that their business model is not as good as the NFL's business model. And the NFL is based in a non-liberal ideology. It's much more incentive-based as opposed to being socialistic or overly magnanimous. We're going to pay millions of dollars to the 13th guy on the end of the bench. That's not a great business model, because at the end of the day, these players are going to leave and they're going to offset the balance of power. That's why they all want to team up together and make these super teams. And super teams are relatively good for the NBA. I'm not against super teams because the NBA has always had super teams. But if you're in New Orleans or if you're in Minnesota, you need to feel like your team has a real chance to win a championship. So that's why it's important that Karl Anthony Towns or Devin Booker are incentivized to stay on their teams by giving them max contracts or having the ability to pay them the most. If you make it even, Steven, all these players are going to run to Miami. They're going to run to Houston or Dallas because there's no state tax there, or they're going to run to the Knicks or to the Clippers or the Lakers because that's where all the action's at. So you can't have that. You have to incentivize these players to want to stay on the team that drafted them so that you can convince all these fan bases that, yes, you should believe that your team has a chance to win and therefore spend more money at our arenas. That's how it works.
Unless you force a trade. So, of course, they're going to force a trade. And what boggles my mind about all this, think about
well, a lot of shit boggles your mind.
About this laissez-faire attitude that the league has when it comes to selling franchises, right? Do you know why players want to go play in LA for the Lakers or maybe now the Clippers? It's not just that the franchises are...
Well, that's you making up something. That's a straw man argument because from what we've seen over the last few years, nobody has wanted to go play for the Lakers or for the Clippers. So you just made that up.
This is a run well, which they are. It's that they're in LA. People want to be in LA. That's why the Lakers cost 10 times what the Pelicans cost. Notice the league, when it comes time to sell the franchise, doesn't tell the owners, you know what, we're going to have a set price for every team.
Well, let's be honest for a moment. The reason why the Lakers cost 10 times more than what the Pelicans cost or anybody else is because of how much they charge their fans in their local area, how much they charge them for television rights and how much they charge them for ticket prices. The Lakers in particular are still living off of what happened from the Magic Johnson, James Worthy, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar era, from the Kobe and Shaq era, from the Kobe and Powell era. That's why it was so important that they signed a superstar, because they had to keep the fans invested in believing that, you know what, you still should be paying top dollar to watch us on cable TV. You still should be paying top dollar to watch us on television. Now, when it comes to the Knicks are working or operating in an economy that is far more expensive than another city or another location. So everything is relative. You can't just say, well, the Knicks are worth the most money. Yeah, they're worth the most money, but they also probably have to spend the most operationally to keep that franchise going because they're in New York.
Sorry, Lakers. Sorry, Knicks. We know your market's more desirable. Therefore, your teams are worth much, much more money. You can't sell it for $4 billion. The average price we've decided arbitrarily or based on some formula is $1 billion. So everyone gets no. When it comes time to sell the franchise, they take what they can get, right?
Yes, because it's called owners. When you own something, you can sell it to the highest bidder, sir. When you're an employee, they have the right to put a salary cap on you so that they can make sure that they can ensure how much money they're going to bring back to the table. That's normally how that works. I cannot think of a business where an employee can dictate to the boss how much they should be making. I mean, unless there are competitors for your services. Then you might come to your boss and say, Joe Blow across the street is offering me 3 times what you're going to offer me. So either you have to match that or I'm going to leave. That's normally how that works in competitive business practices. If you don't have any competition asking you to come on board, then your current boss can pay you whatever they want if you don't have any other skills in any other type of work.
Right? The same reason those franchises are more expensive is the reason the players want to go there. Now, you can still mismanage that, as the Knicks have, right? Until maybe recently, we'll see. But the idea that the league has a player problem is ridiculous. They already got them in place for 6 years, which is way...
No, the league does have a player problem. Because the new paradigm now is that if I'm not happy, I'm just going to complain. So now we have to vet what the reason is for the unhappiness. Kyrie Irving was unhappy with LeBron. Kawhi Leonard was unhappy with how he was treated by the Spurs medical staff. Jimmy Butler was unhappy with his teammates. Now Anthony Davis supposedly is unhappy. Who the hell knows why? I guess he says that he wants to save his legacy. So this is a bad sign for the league. This is a very, very bad sign, because all these things are happening in quote unquote small market teams. So when you're a small market team with a small market fan base and you're able to draft a player and develop them, you want to see that come to fruition. If these other fan bases or these other markets start to think that they're just a minor league system for a major market team, they're no longer going to be fully invested. So you do have to nip this in the bud.
Way more than half the time of your average career. Yeah. 6 years in the same place. What do they want?
Hey, guys, I think you guys are making the wrong argument.
Thank you, sir. Please correct them.
For me, it's not about the CBA. For me, it's not about leaving money on the table. And that, excuse me, that large market argument, it doesn't exist, Max.
Thank you, sir.
Max, people aren't just lining up to go to New York or going to LA. When you get a chance, look at the lottery standings. The large markets are in it, including Chicago.
Thank you, sir.
Here's the thing. When you sign up to do a business deal, and once we exchange funds, it ain't personal no more.
Thank you, sir.
It's business. And as a player, the reason why the league does not have a problem, we know when the trade deadline is. Don't y'all got a ticker counting down the trade deadline? We know when that's coming. You get a chance to anticipate being traded. There are only 10 players currently in the league that have played at least 8 years that have stayed with one team. It comes with it. You're going to get moved.
Thank you, sir.
I got traded from Toronto to New York on the same day the teams played each other. I woke up in Toronto and flew home with the Knicks.
And let me say this once again. Please don't try to play any violence for these players who get traded. It's really not that big a deal. At the end of the day, they're only playing 41 home games a year anyway. Usually, especially when these players are in their early to mid-20s, maybe even late 20s, they only have a home in the city that they play in because they play there. In the off-season, they have another home that they live in, either in LA or maybe in the city that they were raised in. But they could care less. They travel all across the country all season, all year. They have holes in different area codes. It's not like they have to uproot. Now, some of them have families where they do have to uproot. But, that's par for the course. You're making 8 figures a year. Deal with it.
And stayed in a hotel that night. It comes with the territory. And also, being traded ain't a bad thing.
Thank you, sir.
Everybody throws that around like it's a bad thing. It wasn't bad for Kyrie to get traded from the Cavs to the Celtics. They were a better squad. It wasn't bad for Kyrie to leave San Antonio. He wanted to leave. LeBron wanted to leave.
But LeBron's comment is not about the league has a problem.
Let me finish. I'll let y'all go.
It's about the players deciding.
No, it's not about the players deciding, because LeBron James only cares about the players and what they want to do when it's something that he wants or when it's in his favor. He didn't care about what Kyrie wanted when Kyrie wanted to be traded away from Cleveland. Okay, he wanted Kyrie to stay. The reason why he's upset and he's bitching and complaining about this right now is because he wants AD. So he's looking at how the media and the fans are speaking about AD, and now suddenly he wants to act like he's so magnanimous and he cares about Harrison Barnes. He's full of shit.
Comment is about him getting traded before the game. He knew he was getting traded, number one. So that's a misreport. Number two is, when you know you can get traded, guess what? That's 24/7, 365.
Thank you, sir. Before the trading deadline, anything can happen. Stay woke. That's the only time that it's good to be woke, by the way.
Tobias Harris made a game-winning shot and got traded to the Sixers. And that's the greatest thing that could have happened to him.
All I'm saying is the thrust of LeBron's comment is, when teams trade players, no one bats an eye, that's fine, right? But if a player wants to take his fate into his own hands, that's a problem. So
they already have that. It's called free agency. You leave, you put on your big boy pants. If people don't like it, who gives a shit? How did your family feel about it? How did you feel about it? That's all that matters. Everybody in life ain't gonna like you. Fuck them.
So when we ask, does the league have a problem, I interpret that as saying, does the league have a problem if players exercise power? And I am saying no.
Nobody had a problem with Kyrie exercising power, Jimmy Butler exercising power, LeBron James exercising power. They got a chance to choose where they wanted to go, and they weren't even free agents.
Thank you, sir.
Shit.
Right.
No.
So that's why there's no problem with the league.
What I'm alluding to, and I'm not disagreeing.
Well, I disagree with Jalen's summation. I agree with everything that he said, but I disagree with his summation. If his summation is that there's no problem with the league, no, there is a problem with the league, because they're going to have to nip that in the bud. You just can't have players in year 3 of a 5-year deal saying, I want out of here. No, then you should not have signed the 5-year extension or the 3-year extension in the first place.
Disagreeing with what you're saying, but what I'm alluding to is a different point. I'm alluding to it ultimately being a problem down the line as it pertains to the league and the dominion that they want to have over the players. I'm saying the path that it's going towards. You might have had problems before in the past where a player would articulate and verbalize his dissent with the league itself and the powers that they have. We hear about that with the National Football League, and with the NFL, you hear about players and the Players Association alluding to a collective bargaining negotiation that's coming up in a few years, and they can't wait because it might be a holdout, blah, 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 blah. Why? Because the advent of social media and beyond have given voices to the relative voiceless. And I'm saying that the NBA obviously has maximized that reality more so than any other professional athlete. So when you look at it from that perspective, what we're talking about in terms of peace now, I'm saying moving forward, they're giving you an indication of the kind of things that riles them up. It's not an issue now because you're under this collective bargaining agreement for the next several years and you're good. But at some point in time, the path that it's going towards, you're going to see that kind of problem. That's all I'm saying.
Again, I want to...
Well, there's no doubt the owners are definitely going to be watching. So I agree with Stephen A. Smith on that account. There's no doubt about that. They are going to be watching what's going on here, as they should be, because you just can't be handing out 9-figure contracts to guys who are just going to bitch up and spit the bit in the second year of a 4-year deal or the third year of a 5-year deal, now you're not honoring your contract. So something has to be done about that. You should have to justify why you want to be traded, or at least have the tact to keep it behind closed doors.
And I want to talk about the exact example. Harrison Barnes won. He left the Golden State Warriors, won a championship. He went to Dallas for the money.
Agreed. He also went there because Golden State wanted to replace him with KD.
They paid him $90 million, and they're in the lottery. They just got Porzingis. They're pairing him with Luka. He's on the outs now. He's going to Sacramento. They're better right now than Dallas.
Yes. And he's going to get paid.
And he has a chance to make the playoffs this year.
So the league does not have a problem.
The league does not have a problem.
I agree with everything that Jalen Rose says except for his summation.
The game has never been more popular. The players have never been more popular.
And people love this
more
stuff.
Money in the game.
Yeah, just part of the business, all
Part
the
of the
trades.
business, never personal.
All right, appreciate it, Jalen. Thank you.
Now let's also see what Will Kane has to say about LeBron James' hypocrisy when it comes to teams trading players, because he really made the best point of any of them.
Harrison Barnes was traded from the Mavs to the Kings last night in a 3-player deal, and news of the trade came during the Mavs game against the Hornets. Barnes was forced to sit down the stretch, something LeBron addressed on the gram last night, saying there's a double standard with how the players and owners are viewed. Will?
Yes.
Does the NBA have a serious problem on their hands?
No, the NBA does not have any problem. There's a LeBron James problem here. This right here is the Mount Everest of hypocrisy, okay?
Well, what LeBron James is, once again, he's a spoiled child who's never been spanked properly. And now with Adam Silver in control, Adam Silver allows that idiot to rant and rave. As long as it's something liberal or Marxist, Adam Silver doesn't mind, because he's a liberal Caucasian Jew himself. They love when the Negroes just start ranting and raving about how they don't want anybody to oppress them, because they want the so-called black man to believe that order is oppression and that oppression is order. They want the so-called black man to equate the two so that he believes that anarchy is freedom. Therefore, he can never pick himself up, because he always believes that any form of true instruction or order or government, even over himself, is a form of over control or quote unquote oppression. So this is the true problem, and that's why I agree with Will Kane when he says that there's a LeBron James problem. I disagree with him when he says that it's not a problem for the NBA. Yes, it is. You have to nip this in the bud. You just cannot have your superstars 2 years into a 5-year deal claiming that they want to be traded because they're not happy or they don't think that they have a real chance to win. No, you have to play out your contract to the best of your ability. Now, if there are circumstances in your franchise where you're being overly disrespected, either by a teammate or a coach or upper management, where it's becoming untenable for you to maximize your talents and your abilities, then okay. Then, if you want to demand a trade, then that's your business. But you just sitting there and saying, you know what? Now that I think of it, we're not going to win. I want out. Like, come on, man. You're acting like a bitch.
You can't get any higher. This is the pinnacle. If you climb to the top of a mountain and you get to the top, you find this LeBron James Instagram post right here. This is it. No higher level of hypocrisy.
Agreed.
Than this. LeBron James, as we speak, is trying to trade away the entire Los Angeles Lakers franchise.
Thank you, sir.
Everybody is on the block.
And every last one of those guys who are on the block, none of them want to leave. None of them want to leave. And LeBron James does not care about how they feel as long as it would assist them in getting Anthony Davis.
And if he can get it done today, whether or not, if they had an 11 a.m. game and the Pelicans said, we're ready to do the AD deal, he'd say, fellas, off the court. AD's coming in. We know what's going on. And
absolutely. Even Stephen A. Smith had to laugh at that. Well, let me rewind this back a little bit.
And by the way, whether or not, if they had an 11 a.m. game and the Pelicans said, we're ready to do the AD deal, he'd say, fellas, off the court. AD's coming in. We know what's going on. And by the way, at the same time, he's trying to get his coach fired.
Thank you, sir.
So let's not pretend like this is like the little man against the big men. LeBron, you are the man.
That's why it's going to be so interesting when he actually becomes an NBA owner. That's why I state everything in life is about perspective. Once LeBron James becomes an owner, watch how quickly he turns against the players.
You're the man, and you would do this and have done this. You would trade any player, even close friends, move on from close friends and coaches to make your situation better. This is so much hypocrisy, you choke on it.
Thank you, sir. Damn, he said choke on it.
And it's one more thing. It's fake news.
Agreed.
It's absolutely irresponsible fake news. If LeBron wants to do what we do and be a pundit and speak on situations going on around the league, then he needs to be informed, I'm sure.
Well, I've been saying that shit for the last 2 years. I've been saying that for the last 2 years, Will Kane. LeBron James, if he's going to speak, should be informed. But you know what LeBron James is? He's the little kid at the barbecue who gets in the middle of everybody while the music is playing and he starts breakdancing. And everybody crowds around him. All the adults start smiling and laughing and saying, oh, that's so cute. Even if he can't dance. Because they don't want to disappoint or tear down a little kid. That's LeBron James. And that's the super liberal Negro. They talk all types of shit. Don't know what the hell they're talking about. But the liberal Caucasian benefactors and sponsors will clap and say, good job, little Toby. Keep going. Keep making a complete damn jackass of yourself.
There are situations where I've been wrong. But I do my best to be informed. LeBron here is telling you untruth. These are falsehoods. Harrison,
no idea.
Hold on, Max.
How are you arriving at
Here comes the liberal Caucasian Jew to defend the liberal Negro.
at this conclusion?
Listen to me. I was almost done. You would have got it. Harrison Barnes, according to his agent, and Paul Pierce mentioned it last night, Harrison Barnes knew the score. He knew what was up.
And even if he didn't, who gives a shit? That's par for the course. That's what Jalen Rose is trying to explain. You're getting 8 figures. The real issue is that a lot of these Negroes, they get drafted by these teams and they get told this is a family. This is a family atmosphere. It's all about loyalty here. All that is bullshit. You're never supposed to believe that company line. You're loyal to the Most High and to your family. You have integrity with everybody else. But loyalty is something that's built up over a process of time, like equity. All right. What you have with other people, with random people, is respect and integrity. With your family, with the Most High, you have loyalty because they have built up equity with you. Now, you might have friends that you're loyal to or loyal with because they built up equity. But these players, they get drafted and they get seduced into this family atmosphere bullshit. And it's not a family. So what happens is they get traded and they catch feelings about it. You're not supposed to catch feelings. You're getting compensated. You're getting paid.
He knew that he could potentially be traded and it was in the works. He was asked, do you want to play anyway? And he said, I do. I want to play. LeBron suggests he was blindsided. LeBron put in his post, zero knowledge. That's not true, Max. That's a lie. That's fake news.
Thank you, sir.
What is the big message to take out of what LeBron tweeted? I failed to see the hypocrisy here. What LeBron is talking about is the idea that players can be dealt whenever. And the team does that, and they do what's best for the team.
Well, you know what a player should do if he does not want to be dealt whenever? Be good enough to demand a no-trade clause in your contract. Because not every player can be dealt whenever. LeBron James cannot be dealt whenever because he has a no-trade clause. So if you don't want to be traded, be a good enough player to stipulate a no-trade clause in your contract. That's how that works, Max Kellerman. And I'm sure that you have a contract with ESPN. You can't just go to ESPN and say, you know what, even though I have 3 more years on my deal, I want out. I want to go to Fox Sports 1. You can't just do that. They have to negotiate with you. And if they want to, they can buy out your contract and let you go if they want to. If you just call them up and say, you know what, I'm in California right now. I'm about to do the Skip and Shannon show. I'm not coming back, guys. Goodbye. They're going to say, I'll see you in court.
This is his point, Will. This is like, come on, some reading comprehension. They do what's best for the team. And by the way, what he's saying is, players, we make business decisions for ourselves too. All he's pointing out is that there doesn't seem to be hue and cry about teams doing what's best for them, but there does seem to be hue and cry about players doing it. Now,
so then he's a fucking fool to expect fans, once again fanatics, to operate rationally.
You may disagree
it's built
with
upon
that.
a lie. You have a big...
What's the lie?
He just explained it. He already explained that the whole crux of LeBron James' statement is that Harrison Barnes was sitting on the bench and he didn't know that he was going to be traded, and he was so emotionally traumatized in the middle of the game that he got traded. It's a lie. He already knew that he was being traded. And even if he didn't, who gives a shit?
It's built upon the lie that the Mavericks were callous and did not tell Harrison Barnes and would do anything in their own self-interest to the detriment of their player. You and LeBron feel like you have a bigger point to make. You're building it on a lie.
Well, it's not a point. Okay, listen. LeBron's saying that...
He got him on the run now. He thought, oh, okay, listen.
Harrison Barnes was blindsided may not be true, although when he became aware of it, if it was a couple days ago or whatever, or it was just since the Porzingis trade, that's what, you're going along with your career in one place, all of a sudden there's a trade goes down and a week later you're gone. That happens pretty quickly, right? Maybe he had talks with the franchise that led him to believe that maybe he had a future there. He didn't. That's not the big takeaway here. The takeaway is right. How could you read that LeBron post and not understand the takeaway is
because I don't build truths upon lies.
Teams do what's in their best interest, and it's okay. Just as when players do what's in their best interest, it's okay.
I'm sorry, I want to get Stephen in here. Like this, Max, like when LeBron tweets about the NFL treating its players as commodities and that these owners don't care about their players and they'll trade them away, and then LeBron turns around and treats his own teammates and coaches in the same way.
Thank you, sir. Because LeBron has an owner mentality. He's just a double agent and a big hypocrite. That's the point.
Like that?
But that's okay. That means
it wasn't okay with him when he indicted the NFL owners.
LeBron is now you're bringing in other information. You want to?
No, he's just bringing other facts, and he has your ass on the run right now. That's what's really going on. That man has your ass on the run.
Want to say that he went after the NFL hypocritically? Okay, maybe. Well, but in this instance, LeBron's doing what's best for him. Another player does what's best for him. Teams do what's best for them. But what he's saying is mainly the players are criticized out of proportion.
I would appreciate it if both of y'all would leave it to Stephen Naismith, okay? I really would.
Actually, the debate was very good because you wasn't in it, Stephen Naismith, because you clearly don't have much to say about this topic. Will King basically closed it out how it was supposed to be closed out.
That would help y'all. It really would. This is really an example, and it's basically an illustration of the differences that exist now as opposed to before between team and player relations. The players are mega rich. They're driving their own decisions publicly and privately. We recognize that. This is why it's going to potentially be a serious problem for the National Basketball Association, because y'all are both thinking about it in terms of the league, the NBA, the brand, and the fact that it's in a good place. I know that's what you were thinking in terms of you, Will. It's about the hypocrisy of LeBron James. I'm saying no, it's not about either. What this is about is a whole bunch of small market teams that are outside of New York, that are outside of LA, a cadre of individual owners who are going to raise holy hell. And this is the kind of stuff that's going to come down the pike.
I agree. That's why I've stated I agree with Stephen A's summation. I'm not quite too much in agreement with some of his factoids, even though I'm in agreement with some of the things that he's brought out. I definitely agree with his summation. The NBA is going to have a problem with this issue, because you just can't have marquee players doing this.
You cannot. If you are the National Basketball Association, even though the sport was built on the backs of popular players like Jordan and Magic and Bird before that, Isaiah Thomas in between, Kobe and Shaq later on, etc., etc. When you have a situation, and you're talking about big time money, when you have a situation where players who are under contract are still in a position to manipulate things and speak up on behalf of themselves or what have you. All I'm saying...
And try to destroy other franchises. Like LeBron James and Rich Paul, they basically tried to destroy and have been relatively successful in destroying the New Orleans Pelicans franchise. It's going to take them a while to rebound from this.
What I'm saying is, from a league relation perspective, in terms of the kind of things that they want to get done down the line, even though those marquee players ain't going to suffer, the middle of the road players are going to be made to suffer, just so the example can be established that we are the league and the players will not run.
That's a good point. But the whole problem doesn't occur till 5.5 years into a guy's career. He has no choice where he played if he wants.
That's hypothetical. I mean, how can we say that? Anthony Davis has demanded a trade with over 1.5 years left on his contract. So what's to stop a player from demanding a trade with 2.5 years left on their contract or 3.5 years left on their contract? What's to stop them? How do we know that Devin Booker's not going to be next?
He wants to keep even most of the money. After 5.5 years, players are going to start to bring leverage to bear. Big deal. I mean, what's the problem?
The problem is that you have a bevy of players who are in the mix, who are close to that 5 years. And so as a result, because of the climate...
They put their time in?
No, I'm saying the climate now is such that a lot of players are going to be causing...
Agreed.
For what it's worth, when Jalen was on, he brought up the same point, that Harrison Barnes was aware that this was going to happen.
Right. Yeah. It's important. It's because it's the facts behind the story. It's important.
Agreed, Will Kane. Good job, sir.
All right. Well,
But that's basically it on that. I agree with Jalen Rose and Will Kane here. I agree with Stephen A. Smith's summation. Marks Kellerman, I don't know what to do with him. But, he's right on certain issues as well. It is what it is. But this will be an issue that the NBA owners will be addressing. There's just no way that you can have top-level players signed to a contract and have to be concerned that they're going to demand trades just because they feel like it with 2.5, 1.5, 3.5 years left on their deal. I mean, you just can't have that. So peace.